Give me a beat, Matt. Good morning. I hope that everybody is doing well. I am Ricky Boyette, Chief of Public Affairs for the New Orleans District for the Corps of Engineers, and on behalf of the New Orleans District, the Vicksburg District, and the Memphis District, I welcome you to our first virtual Mississippi River Levee Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement public meeting. For the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement, we'll also be using the terminology SEIS. They are the same thing. It's just what we tend to go with in conversation. I do feel I can speak for all of my teammates that we would all prefer the opportunity to meet with you face-to-face, provided this information is important to so many of you that live along and behind the Mississippi River levees. And we also would like the opportunity to hear your feedback and discussion with you directly. Unfortunately, our current challenging environment, we are unable to do so. So we have attempted to provide the best alternative that we can. I also feel that I can speak for our team when I say the success of doing this virtually will depend a lot on your participation. To ensure that your questions and ideas are heard, we have developed two methods for which you can submit questions to our team. First, you can ask a question through the chat function of this Facebook site. However, we do understand that you may be watching through Facebook but do not have a Facebook account, or would just prefer to wish to submit that question some other way. For you, you are also able to text or call our hotline at 601-392-2237. We will have team members on site and throughout the valley monitor both the chat function as well as the phone text options to ensure that your questions are included in this discussion. I do also want to take this moment to say that we are also in the public comment portion of our evaluation. Through the 13th of October, you can also submit comments to the hotline as well as the email address and physical addresses you will see repeatedly on the screen. Today, we are essentially going to hold this meeting in two segments. First, we have a pre-recorded presentations on the project as well as the statement and where we are within our evaluation. Our intent is that for these presentations, we'll provide you with the pertinent information on this critical life safety project, as well as to prime the next portion of our meeting, a virtual discussion with you. The chat and the phone will be available to you at any time during the meeting, so you do not have to wait to submit your questions or comments till the end of the presentations. You can submit them at any time. After the pre-recorded messages, we're going to resume the live meeting, and we will be there for this specific purpose to talk with you, to hear your questions and comments. We have members of the project delivery team, again, here on site, as well as virtually. We are monitoring all options. We are monitoring the chat. We are monitoring the Google throughout, and then we will have the right people there to answer the questions. In addition to those that you'll see on camera, I do want to say we do understand that this project covers a lot of acreage. We're looking at north upriver of Memphis to downriver of New Orleans. And we know that your questions may range from an overall scope to something more local, to a specific levee section. While I can't say we can answer every question you have, we do have people available from throughout the region to try and put us in the best position to do so. Again, thank you so much for giving us a couple of hours of your time. Now, please allow me to begin our pre-recorded portion with a welcoming message from Colonel Robert Hilliard. He's the commander of the Vicksburg District, who is the lead district for this effort.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Colonel Rob Hilliard, commander of the Vicksburg District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And I just appreciate you all being with us today for this MRL public meeting. I'm also happy to represent my fellow commanders, Colonel Zach Miller from Memphis, and Colonel Steve Murphy from New Orleans, as this is really a project that spans all three districts. Vicksburg is the lead for the program, but the other two are so heavily involved and with us today. Again, I appreciate you being with us on this very special project. The MR&T, the Mississippi River and Tributaries project, is an incredibly important project. And the Mississippi River itself is such a gem for our whole nation. From its inception, the MR&T project has prevented over 1.5 trillion in damages, protecting over 7 million people. Incredibly important, not only to this region, but to the nation. And so we're here today to get your comments on the Mississippi River levees, and in addition to the supplemental environmental impact statement that will allow us to even do more work on this system. As with any system, it needs to be maintained each and every year. And this is an important step in continuing that maintenance. But part of this is transparency and understanding your thoughts on this project as well. So our purpose today is to explain the findings of our current study, our current analysis, and then open it up to get your feedback. In the end, our hope is that it will make this a better document. Of course, we'd like to do this in person, but given the current COVID environment, we are doing this virtual, and I'm sure we'll make this work. And again, we just look forward to your feedback during this session and our other session that we're going to hold. Again, thank you for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you. Take care.
Hello, my name is Daniel Sorrell. I'm a Senior Project Manager for the VICKSBURG District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It has been my pleasure to lead the project delivery team responsible for completing the draft Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement number 2 for the Mississippi River Levees project. Our project delivery team consists of over 100 team members from the Memphis, Vicksburg, and New Orleans districts, the Mississippi Valley Division headquarters, and the Engineering Research Development Center in Vicksburg, Mississippi. I would like to take a moment to echo Colonel Hilliard's thoughts and to welcome all of you to our public meeting. The public's participation and interest in our projects is critical to the NEPA process and making sure that it's working properly. We look forward to hearing your thoughts and answering any questions we can about our project. I'm going to give a brief overview of the Mississippi River Levees project and how it fits underneath the umbrella of the Mississippi River and Tributaries program. After I'm done, I will pass things along to our environmental lead, Mike Throne, for a little more in-depth look at the findings discussed in SEIS number 2 and a description of how to continue commenting even once these meetings are done. The Mississippi River is the world's third largest watershed, draining 41% of the continental United States. The river and its alluvial valley support an enormous agricultural economy, and continuous and safe navigation along the river are extremely important to our nation's commerce. Following the devastating flood of 1927, Congress established the Mississippi River and Tributaries Program, or MR&T, through the passage of the 1928 Flood Control Act. The MR&T was created to provide a comprehensive and unified system of public works that would provide the lower Mississippi River alluvial valley with flood protection and an efficient navigation channel. Through the years since its inception, the MR&T has evolved into a four-pronged approach consisting of an expansive levee system along both the mainline Mississippi River and many of its tributaries, a channel stabilization and improvement program dedicated toward providing safe navigation along the river, a tributary improvement program for various tributaries of the river, and finally, floodways, which act as a relief valve for the river when flows reach certain trigger points. Through the course of the project, over $16 billion have been invested by our nation in the MR&T. However, over $1.5 trillion in flood damages have been prevented. That's a 96-to-1 return on investment for the nation's dedication to the MR&T. In just the 2019 flood alone, $250 billion in flood damages were prevented. There are 10 million acres of agricultural land behind the MR&T system and over 7.2 million people who live in the Mississippi Alluvial Valley. The mainline Mississippi River Levees, or MRL, are the backbone of the MR&T program, extending more than 1,600 miles from Cape Girardeau, Missouri to Hedda Passes, Louisiana. The MRL is designed and constructed to withstand the project design flood, which is defined as the greatest flood having a reasonable probability of occurrence. To date, approximately 83% of the MRL is constructed to a point that it would withstand the project design flood. The remaining 17%, while in place, has deficiencies either in height, seepage remediation, or stability that require additional construction before we can say that it can withstand the project design flood. In November of 2017, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers completed an analysis of these remaining items and have identified the 143 work items that are discussed in SEIS number 2. Let's discuss the project design flood in additional detail. The far right-hand side of this table represents the project design flood for various stations along the Mississippi River in cubic feet per second. These numbers are the maximum flow rates that you would expect to see at each of these stations during the project design flood. The remaining columns in this table illustrate the maximum observed discharge rates that were observed during these historic flood events. Let's focus only on 2011 for a moment, as it was the flood record for most of our system. You'll notice when comparing the discharge rates at these locations to the project design flood that the 2011 event did not equal or surpass the project design flood discharge rates. In fact, for most of our stations, the flow rates observed during the 2011 event only represented about 80 to 90% of what we would expect to see during the project design flood. So with a higher discharge rates, you would expect higher river stages and more pressure on the system. This diagram illustrates the importance of completing that remaining 17% of the MRL to the point that it could withstand the project design flood. Construction of the MRL system has been ongoing since it was authorization in the 1928 Flood Control Act. In 1976, the Corps completed an environmental impact statement for the MR&T program. Construction continued until the 1990s when concerns about the environmental impacts and the compensatory mitigation for MRL construction activities necessitated the completion of the first supplemental environmental impact statement for the MRL project. The table on the right illustrates the findings from 1998's SEIS number 1. In total, 128 work items scattered through the 3 districts discussed the need for over 262 miles of levee enlargement and 131 miles of seepage remediation. Construction on these work items continues to date and is subject to federal appropriation of funds. Past performance during flood events, updated survey data, and other information have been analyzed since 1998, and the Corps has realized that additional items not discussed in SEIS number 1 were required to bring the entire MRL system up to the level that would withstand the project design flood. In November of 2017, the Corps completed an engineering evaluation of all remaining authorized work on the MRL. And in March 2018, the Corps determined that an additional supplemental environmental impact statement would be necessary. A notice was published in the Federal Register on July the 13th of 2018 of the Corps' intent to complete SEIS number 2. The 2017 engineering assessment revealed 143 reaches that require some sort of remedial construction activities before that particular reach is built to its authorized grade and is therefore able to withstand the project design flood. The remedial measures prescribed for each of these 143 work items will be described in more detail in the coming slides. We'll start out with levee enlargements. For the vast majority of the MRL, the levee consists of a mound of impervious earthen material that is built to withstand floodwaters and through seepage of floodwater. In areas where these levees are not tall enough, we propose to go in and acquire additional earthen material to place on top of the levee to make it higher. When you're placing material on top of the levee, though, you also have to expand the footprint as illustrated in this diagram to ensure that that section of levee is structurally sound and able to withstand the forces of floodwaters pressing against it. Depending on the location of these projects, these levee raises may occur on the land side, which is illustrated here in this diagram, on the river side, which would be the opposite side of the levee, or they can even straddle the existing levee section. In urban areas, earthen levees are typically not a viable option. In these locations, we typically see a concrete flood wall in lieu of a levee. In some of these areas, these flood walls may not have been built high enough, or they may have stability concerns when loaded to the maximum levels during the project design flood. For these reaches, we propose to go in and construct taller flood walls or to do stabilization measures that will help fortify the existing flood walls that are in place. Beyond height deficiencies, another major concern with our levee systems is the threat of underseepage. Underseepage occurs when during flood events, high waters are able to find pressure releases in pervious substratums underneath the levee, and that water actually moves underneath the levee rather than through or over it. This is a concern because oftentimes when this water is moving underneath the levee, it can carry soils with it. If you have enough soil moved underneath the levee, you create a void and you run the risk of the entire levee settling, at which time you would expect a major breach of the levee system. To combat this underseepage, one of our primary tactics employed is to build an earthen seepage berm as illustrated in this diagram. Typically, earthen seepage berms are built out of an impervious clay material that is harvested from a nearby location and is placed along the landside toe of the levee. Typically, our berms extend from 150 to 300 feet from the toe of the levee. And basically, you're not stopping that underseepage, but you're creating a situation where it has to go so far before it can find a relief that the water loses a great deal of energy and is no longer a threat to the integrity of the levee. Oftentimes, we'll have seepage concerns in areas where maybe residences or public infrastructure such as roads exist right along the landside toe of the levee. And in areas where we don't have room to construct those seepage berms, often we will employ relief wells in lieu of earthen seepage berms. Relief wells are simply a vertical well that are installed along the landside toe of the levee. They're constructed with a filter material and a well screen. They go down into the ground and intercept where that underseepage is coming through and provide a controlled outlet for that seepage water. Basically, coming out of that relief well and that filter screen will prevent that seepage water from moving material with it. And it will provide a much more controlled outlet for that seepage water. Typically, relief wells also include some level of ditching to make sure that we tie into existing drainage and that seepage water does have somewhere to go and does not pond along the land side of the levee. In addition to height deficiency and underseepage concerns, we also have various reaches along the MRL where we're experiencing recurring levee slides. Levee slides occur when the embankment material on the levee side slopes becomes saturated during rain or flood events and then slough when gravitational forces pull that material down. The two pictures on the right illustrate what levee slides typically look like. Levee slides are a problem because they damage the side slope of the levee. They open up an area where you could get through seepage through the levee because the levee face is not as robust as it should be, and they can also become a concern if they creep up to the crown of the levee and could jeopardize the total height of the levee during a flood event as well. So what we have to do when we have these slides, we have to go back in and smooth out that dirt, pull it back up, and reestablish the grass. And these things take a lot of time and effort. So in areas where we continue to have to do these same repairs after various flood seasons, we're proposing to flatten these slopes, which we hope will reduce the occurrence of these levee slides. So rather than having a situation where we're raising the levee here, we're only going to be putting material on the side slope as evidenced in the diagram to reduce the slope of the levee. This will hopefully, again, reduce the chances that we have recurring levee slides in the future. We've discussed the history and the national significance of the Mississippi River and Tributaries program. We've also discussed the need and the importance of the MRL system, as well as emphasized how important it is to continue to maintain and construct the MRL to its authorized grade and to ensure that it can withstand the project design flood. The table on the left breaks down the 143 proposed work items that are discussed in SEIS number 2 by both the work type and the district in which they will occur. The map on the right shows where these work items are located and gives you an idea of the overall scale of the project. For more information about these particular work items and their location, please visit Appendix 1 of the SEIS. I would like to thank you for your time and your attendance at our meeting, and I look very forward to hearing your questions and comments. I will now turn things over to the project's NEPA coordinator, Mike Throne. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mike Throne, and I am the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, coordinator for this supplemental environmental impact statement. I appreciate everyone's participation today, and I can assure you that any input we get from you will be valuable to us. For a very brief background on NEPA, NEPA is the basic national charter for environmental protection, and it requires federal agencies to prepare environmental assessments or environmental impact statements for most federal actions. NEPA also requires that environmental information be made available to the public. Since this work is considered a major federal action that significantly affects the quality of the human environment, we have prepared a draft environmental impact statement for review and comment. So again, we are holding this meeting to discuss the findings of our second draft supplemental environmental impact statement on the Mainline Mississippi River Levees, or MRL, system of the Mississippi River and Tributaries, or MR&T, project. This is a joint effort of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Memphis, Vicksburg, and New Orleans districts. Vicksburg District was designated as the lead district in conducting this SEIS. We're soliciting your comments on the plan we have proposed. The notice of availability for this draft SEIS number 2 was published in the Federal Register on August 28, 2020, and the SEIS number 2 is available on our project website. We will show the link to this website on our closing slide, which we will refer back to during the commenting portion of the meeting. The comment period for this draft SEIS is open through October 13th, so if you would rather not comment today, you may continue to do so through this date. Mississippi River Mainline Levees, or MRL, feature of the MR&T project is the subject of these investigations. They've been under construction since the authorization in 1928, and this system is designed to reduce flood risk in the Mississippi River alluvial valley, which you can see here outlined in blue, extending between Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and the head of Passes, Louisiana. The purpose and need of this project is to address specific areas of the MRL feature, particularly levees and floodwalls, that are deficient, to ensure that the MRL system provides protection up to the congressionally authorized level of the project design flood, which again is defined as the greatest flood having a reasonable probability of occurrence, in order to ensure reliability and resiliency of the system. These specific areas of work are shown in red on this map and include those 143 work items that the earlier presentation provided some depth to. As you can see, there is a rather large project area comprising parts of 7 states, including the Boot Heel, Missouri, southern tip of Illinois, eastern Arkansas, western Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi, and portions of Louisiana. We considered several alternatives for this work, some of which were suggested during scoping for this SEIS. Some of these were eliminated from further analysis, and others were carried forward. Because the majority of the work items require earth and borrow material for construction, this SEIS II evaluates the no-action alternative as well as other alternatives for selecting borrow sources for the construction of the work items and recommends a preferred alternative. The no action alternative involves no levee or flood wall construction to address the known deficiencies. Only normal maintenance and repair of the existing levees would occur. As with any of our alternatives, when the Mississippi River reaches flood stage, we would initiate flood fight activities, which include monitoring performance of the features, surveying for new seepage, installing poly sheeting, and ringing sand boils. It could also include temporary levee and flood wall raises using sandbags or other materials. These emergency measures are not as robust and reliable as the proposed relief wells, berms, and permanent levee flood wall raises at these locations, and the flood fighting teams would only have a limited time to get them in place during a flood event. The probability of failure in the levee system would likely be the highest at the areas identified as deficient. It is not likely that all of the areas would fail during a flood, but a single failure at any point would result in catastrophic damages. Alternative 2 would implement the proposed improvements and modifications using the most cost-efficient means available. The 143 work items would be constructed to the design grade. Reaches of the MRL with seepage concerns would be addressed with berms or relief wells to lower risks of levee failure. Reaches of levee with stability concerns due to persistent levee slides would be addressed by flattening the side slopes of the levee. Reaches of flood walls with stability concerns would be replaced or repaired to lower the risks of failure. Most often, borrow areas for levee repairs would be located along the riverside toe of the levee adjacent to the proposed construction locations, as that would require some of the shortest haul distances. Traditional mitigation measures to compensate for habitat losses would be included as required by law and policy. For the borrow areas themselves, no provisions would be made for drainage, reforestation, or other environmental enhancement features. Alternative 3 addresses public concerns identified during scoping regarding the locations of borrow areas, access routes, and other ground disturbances. Construction for Alternative 3 would be similar to Alternative 2, except this alternative establishes a method for identifying and ranking potential borrow sources in terms of their land use and locations to avoid and minimize adverse environmental effects. This alternative would use an avoid and minimize approach to reduce impacts to bottomland hardwood forests to the extent practicable and would allow USACE to work with landowners and local sponsors to reduce impacts to them. Alternative 4 addresses the public comments regarding the need to examine non-structural flood control. Section 73 of the Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA, of 1974 directed federal agencies to consider non-structural flood control methods to prevent damages to structures. The MR&T project authorization predates WRDA of 1974, and this SEIS is not a planning study that is considering methods to provide flood control, optimize protection, or maximize economic benefits. The flood control system is already in place and provides the level of protection for which it is authorized in some areas. The purpose and need of this project is, again, to ensure reliability and resiliency of the system in the specific areas that are deficient. Non-structural flood protection can include temporary features like sandbags, geotubes, and deployable flood walls. These are all things that are currently used during flood fighting to supplement the structural system. The action of flood fighting is assumed to be part of every alternative, and a separate non-structural alternative would not meet the purpose and need, so this alternative was eliminated from detailed analysis. Alternative 5 considered nature-based features as recommended during scoping in lieu of traditional levee raises or seepage control actions. Section 1134 of WRDA 2016 requires USACE to consider nature-based alternatives during plan formulation of feasibility studies. Much like non-structural, the MR&T predates this requirement, and this is not a planning study. As described in our Notice of Intent, this is not a reformulation of the overall MRL feature of the MR&T project. Section 1134 of WRDA 2016 defines nature-based features as those created by human design, engineering, and construction that work in concert with natural processes or to mimic as closely as possible conditions which would occur in the area absent human changes to the landscape or hydrology in order to achieve study objectives. Natural features are defined as those that are created through the action of physical, geological, biological, and chemical processes over time. Beaches and wetlands are examples of this. For instance, while healthy wetland ecosystems located on the riverside or flood side of the levees can locally attenuate small rises in the river, they do not provide protection against the project-designed flood. Thus, a separate nature-based alternative would not meet the purpose and need and was eliminated from detailed analysis. Although a separate nature-based alternative was not analyzed further, Alternative 3 did include things such as borrow area design to the extent practicable to mimic natural features and minimize environmental impacts. Alternative 6 considered relocating levees that are unstable or prone to seepage if other means were not available to address these issues. Engineering analysis determined proposed solutions to the deficiencies noted at each location. Thus, it's anticipated that all can be addressed at a much lower cost than levee relocations would incur. Moving levees would create extensive ground disturbances and environmental impacts at the site of both the new levee and the existing levee if it were to be degraded. In addition, this would require extensive borrow areas. We could not have a significant lapse in flood protection, so we would need to maintain the protection afforded by the mainline levee while a setback was being constructed. Thus, Alternative 6 did not undergo additional detailed analysis. As we mentioned, Alternatives 1 through 3 were carried forward for detailed analysis. Alternative 3, our preferred alternative, used a prioritization criteria that you can see here on the left side of the screen that works to avoid minimized impacts to those sensitive resources identified during scoping. Whereas Alternative 2, our traditional construction alternative that is based on a more cost-efficient design, would typically obtain borrow material within the forested badger or land's river side of the levee with a shorter haul distance. Using the prioritization criteria for Alternative 3, where practical, we move the borrow areas to cleared lands with a perhaps slightly longer haul distance, but with less impacts to forested wetlands. As you can see illustrated here on the right side of the screen. In addition to minimizing impacts to forest and wetlands, another common theme revealed during scoping was the ability for landowners to have a voice in the design of borrow areas. Our non-federal sponsors work with landowners to provide the lands for borrow. Thus, we identified as part of Alternative 3 environmental designs that could be incorporated into the borrow areas on their lands. In our aquatic assessment, we show some of the benefits things like a sinuous shoreline, islands, and buffers in a borrow area can have on these water bodies. It is important to point out that the Corps of Engineers would have no rights or site protection instruments to these lands after construction, and as such, we did not use these environmental features to offset any of our impacts in terms of calculating compensatory mitigation requirements. As part of Alternative 3, we will communicate these benefits and opportunities to the non-federal sponsors and landowners, and we will work to take advantage of any of these opportunities as they present themselves during detailed design. Again, our agency would design and construct these features into the borrow areas, but would essentially walk away after construction. As was mentioned in the earlier presentation, funding for implementation of the 143 work items would be received through annual congressional appropriations. Based on traditional funding allocations, these phased work items would likely extend for decades, and as such, some programmatic frameworks are incorporated and outlined in this SEIS. In 2019, we initiated the development of a programmatic agreement that would govern the Section 106 review process for cultural resources for this series of undertakings. The consulting parties included 34 federally recognized tribes, the state historic preservation offices from the 7 states, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, and the National Park Service. Similarly, Section 7 consultations with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service pursuant to the Endangered Species Act, things like State 401 water quality certifications, site assessments for hazardous, toxic, and radioactive waste, farmland conversion impact rating forms coordinated with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, and other environmental compliance items would be updated and or obtained after congressional appropriations are received and while detailed engineering and construction plans are being developed. The significant resources identified during scoping and analyzed in the SEIS are shown here: waterfowl, terrestrial habitat, bats, migratory birds, threatened and endangered species, wetlands, aquatics, water quality, air quality, cultural resources, socioeconomics, environmental justice, prime farmland, HTRW, recreation, aesthetics, and noise. The items in bold include those quantitative assessments we conducted to determine compensatory mitigation requirements using ecological models that were certified or approved by the Corps' Ecosystem Restoration National Planning Center of Expertise in accordance with our policy. So our colleagues at the Corps' Engineer Research and Development Center conducted these quantitative assessments. The waterfowl assessment utilized the Manual for Calculating Duck Use Days in the Mississippi Alluvial Valley, developed by Dr. Mickey Heitmeyer. The wetland assessment utilized the Regional Guidebook for applying the hydrogeomorphic approach to assessing functions of forested wetlands in the Mississippi Alluvial Valley, or HGM manual, and the Wetland Value Assessment, or WVA manual. Impacts and benefits to the terrestrial environment were quantified using the Fish and Wildlife Service's habitat evaluation procedures, utilizing 6 different habitat suitability index models of various wildlife species. And finally, the aquatic assessment was conducted using the Barrow Area Habitat Suitability Index fish diversity model. The fieldwork for these was conducted in 2018 and 2019, and results were coordinated with our interagency team throughout the development of the SEIS. This slide summarizes the results of these ecological assessments. Impacts from Alternative 2, our traditional construction alternative, could be offset by reforesting approximately 1,776 acres of frequently flooded agricultural lands, as opposed to 1,447 acres required for Alternative 3. So we were able to reduce our compensatory mitigation by 329 acres for our preferred alternative. Breaking down the compensatory mitigation requirements by district, you can see that approximately 47% are for the 35 work items in the Memphis district, 42% for the 16 work items in the Vicksburg district, and 11% for the 92 work items in the New Orleans district. Here, you can see the key milestones related to this SEIS. The Notice of Intent was published in the Federal Register on July 13, 2018. We held a cooperating agency meeting with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Osage Nation, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the cooperating agencies for this SEIS, the following month. Currently, the draft report is out for review, with the comment period closing on October 13th. The final SEIS is scheduled to be distributed at the end of October for its 30-day review, followed by the signing of the Record of Decision scheduled for early December. So, this concludes the summary of our findings. I would like to first thank everyone who assisted in this effort and encourage anyone interested to submit questions or comments either today or in writing through October 13th. The project website is also shown here for anyone that is interested in additional information. Again, thank you for participating today, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, everyone. That was our pre-recorded session of the event. We're going to transition into the next portion, which would be Q&A and being able to talk with you directly. If I can, I would like to go ahead and bring up the comment slide once again. That'll help just an idea of how you can not only submit comments today through Facebook as well as through the Google text number, but also, again, we are in the public comment period for this evaluation, so it's very important to send yours in through the means in which we can get your comments so that we can get them in the record. We can fully evaluate as they're going through. We have multiple options for these public comments. One is email to the MRL SEIS email address that you'll see. You can also submit them to the district engineer of the Vicksburg district through physical mail, or you can call or text the number that you see on the screen now. I do want to stress that the comment closing period is the 13th of October, so we definitely want to get your comments in before that time. At this point, we will transition again into the question and answer period. We have put in some of our project delivery team leads who are here to really lead the question and answer session. They will periodically confer with others on the team, but if I can, I'll go ahead and have them introduce themselves.
Good morning, my name is Daniel Summerall. I'm a project manager at the Vicksburg district.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Varisco. I'm currently the acting chief of Projects and Restoration branch here at the Corps of Engineers, lead project management for New Orleans.
Good morning. My name is Mark Lahair. I am the New Orleans District National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, environmental lead.
All right, so we'll get into the question and answer here. The first question was from Ms. Adler. She asked, what portion of the 1976 EIS has not become outdated, and why wasn't a completely new EIS prepared? So it's actually a very complicated question and a very good one. That actually, we won't be able to answer it immediately today. We're actually going to need some time with that, but we obviously have logged it. We will respond to it formally, and we will get you a straight answer there. I think it's just important to note that, yeah, that we have 1976, and then we had the 1998 SEIS, and now we're here on the 2018 SEIS. Question 2, if we have it written. I hate to read behind me. Just hang for 1 second,
So just how we're kind of pulling it in, just you can see behind the scenes. As we have a team sitting behind, they're pulling the information off of Facebook as well as the Google information, and they'll be bringing it in through. So there may be a little delay between receiving the questions and moving them forward. We just want to make sure that we are accurately capturing your question as well as ensuring that we have the right answers.
Okay. Number 2, and I believe, I think I saw when it was going through, I think this is Ms. Renfro asked this question. Why is the focus only on levee construction and improvement? This Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement 2 provides an opportunity to develop meaningful long-term flood damage reduction solutions for the Mississippi River and communities that actually address the underlying causes of increased flood risk and also help restore the river's hydrologic processes, including connection to floodplain and delta wetlands to minimize future flood risk. So that's an excellent question. Thank you, Ms. Renfro. So the answer here from the team, the flood control system is already in place and provides the level of protection for which it is authorized in some areas. But the purpose and the need of this project is to ensure reliability and resiliency of the system in the specific areas that we're outlining here in the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement. So we are deficient in some areas. As described in the Notice of Intent, and that's included in Appendix 21, or Appendices 21 of the SEIS, this is not a reformulation of the overall MRL feature of the MR&T project. I guess put another way, looking at alternatives to what's already in place for the MR&T is not the scope of this effort. So we do thank you for that question, Ms. Renfro. Yeah, exactly. This is a little addendum. I think it's almost what I just said. Reformulation would require a new authorization approved by Congress. And I just, on a personal note, I am aware that Congress has taken an active interest in the Lower Mississippi River, so there's always a possibility with any new Water Resource Development Act that could occur. But it's, it would require, in order to look at what I think you're getting at, a more holistic system is going to require additional authorization for the Corps to consider that which you're talking about. Thank you for the question. Sarah, question 3? Okay. Just pause here for a second. The question 3 is being looked at right now.
Excellent. As we are pulling the next question up, I do want to take this moment to reiterate and stress that we are looking for public comments. We're looking for questions today, but we're also looking for public comments for the record. On the slide, on the screen, you should see the different ways in which you can submit. Again, email, physical mail, and call or text the 601 number. Again, just to reiterate, the public comment period itself is open until the 13th of October, so we are looking for that information to come into. We also do want to point that all of the information that's being provided today will be available on the website, so you'll be able to see the slides, you'll be able to see the video of this session as we move in to later events. So that website is a good source to continue to visit as we move to a final SEIS. And again, while we're waiting, please do not hesitate to chat with Facebook or submit a text or voicemail to the Google hotline the 601-392-2237. So thank you. Just to reiterate, we do have questions come in. It's just taking a minute to transcribe and get them up to our BDT. So I do apologize for the delay. It's just part of the kind of making this work. We do ask for your patience. One day I'll get like really good monitors that I can just boom them right up, but not yet. It's coming though. As we're working on the question and the answering for it, I do also want to take this opportunity to say that we will be doing this meeting again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We're hoping to try and give multiple opportunities for people to attend. We urge everyone who is here, if you're available, to again tune in. The questions could be, or the comments could be different. So we're hoping that with these two meetings, we'll be able to get as much information to you, but also get as much information from you as possible.
Pardon me, sorry. So we have question 3 is from Ms. Renfro, and it's another good one. While the 2011 flood was far below the project design flood, flood frequency has been high in the last decade. Do any of the alternatives described in this update, the SEIS II, do anything to address the more frequent river floods? The short answer is no. This is based on the project design flood. You can read more about the project design flood in section 1.4 of the SEIS. That's pages 11 through 14 of the report. So the short answer is the things that we are proposing to take action on are related to the project design flood and not based on frequency. Thank you again for that question. And we're now working towards question 4. So thank you for your continued patience, everyone. And Ricky, you can do a song and dance maybe.
And that's why we put Jeff in the center table. So we are working on, we've got a few more questions coming in. I do want to say hi to our friends, residents, and neighbors. We are looking at the SEIS that is all of the lower Mississippi River mainline levees. And so we are looking at residents from Illinois and Arkansas, Tennessee. So it's, we're glad to see such a wide variety of regions being represented today as they're following us on Facebook. We will be just a moment as we go through. Again, I think we have the slide up that shows how to submit comments. And so as you move forward into evaluating the study, and we understand that for many of you this may be an introduction, so as you evaluate the study, please do not hesitate to send us our comments so that we consider for the record.
All right. So for question 4 is from Ms. Adler again. Was sea level rise as outlined in Army Corps Engineering pamphlet EP 1100-2-1 considered? And so I'll go ahead. This actually goes back to the project design flood. Again, in the last paragraph on page 14, I'm going to read because the paragraph actually completely answers this question and says how we assess sea level rise. So beginning reading now from the report, the assessment also evaluated climate change and sea level rise. In terms of climate change, after conducting a regional literature review and evaluating the currently available data for the Mississippi River Basin, the assessment found that the meteorological and hydrological underpinnings of the MR&T PDF being the project design flood, are found to be adequate. The assessment evaluated the sensitivity to sea level rise through a simulation of the high sea level rise scenario following the guidance of Engineering Regulation 1100-2-8162. The assessment demonstrated that the maximum expected influence of sea level rise under the high scenario would range from 0.1 feet at Baton Rouge to 1.1 feet in Venice. Additional information associated with sea level rise can be found in the results of the assessment. That's a USACE publication from 2018. So again, thank you, Ms. Adler, for that question.
Hey, we had a question from Mr. Stokes regarding projects in the Boot Hill of Missouri. Mr. Stokes, you provided an email address. We'll certainly be happy to send some information to you to drill down into those projects and the location in the document where you can find that information. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a question from Mr. Mike Irwin. The question is, have there been any considerations such as increased mitigation ratios for long-standing MRL compensatory deficits? So to answer that question, the models that we use to evaluate and assess the compensatory mitigation for losses to specific types of wetlands, including bottomland hardwoods, essentially dictate the ratio for which the mitigation is at that level. Basically saying that the hydrogeomorphic model that's used upriver and the wetlands value assessment model, specifically the bottomland hardwoods model, dictate those ratios. So as far as increased mitigation ratios, that's not how the models work. We are aware that there are longstanding MRL compensatory deficits. That is documented in a report that is submitted to Congress annually by agency. As part of the new proposed 143 work items, those mitigation deficits, in addition to the impacts that will occur as a result of the proposed borrow sites and impacts, will be compensated for as part of this action.
As we're working on the next questions, I do want to note that Ms. Adler did submit what we are receiving or we're viewing as a comment. So I do want to read that. It says, please add mitigation measures to keep bike lanes open or rerouted safely during construction. The Mississippi River Trail is a national bike corridor. Thanks for all the great work keeping us dry. So thank you, ma'am. We will enter that comment into the record. Again, there are multiple ways to submit comments or questions today, so please continue to do so, and we will stand by as we are awaiting the next question to come in. Hi everyone, it's me again. So it doesn't look like we have a question or a comment that's waiting to come in. So I do want to say you can provide your question through a chat function on Facebook. You can also call or text it in to our line, and we will get through it. We do thank you all for joining us this morning. We hope that you did get good information and the avenues to receive additional information. But we will continue to stay online for a little while as to give an opportunity for your questions to come in. So, again, for those of you who do have to leave, we completely understand that. We do thank you for joining us this morning. We'll be again online tomorrow at 6 p.m. We'll be at the same location within the New Orleans District Facebook page. So, like us, follow us. You can also follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. I had to give a little plug. I am the Chief of Public Affairs. So, as we are waiting, please ask us any questions. Again, we may not be able to answer all of them, but we will do our best to do so. We have team members in Memphis. We have team members in Vicksburg. We have team members here in the New Orleans, both present as well as virtually. That can be a little bit of why there's a delay between getting the question and the answer, as the subject matter expert may not be here in the room with us. However, we do have the best team we can that can answer most of the questions, so please do not hesitate to submit a question to us.
Hey, this is Jeff Varisco again. I just want to go ahead. We've gotten some comments that folks have been calling the line to leave comments, but have not been leaving a voicemail. So they've been calling but not leaving a voicemail. So again, I'm going to leave the number. You can actually text to this number as well if you don't want to leave a voicemail. And the number is area code 601-392-2237. Again, that's area code 601-392-2237. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have given you a little. Please do leave your name, your location, and any other pertinent details that we might need, and the project that you're specifically concerned about. If it is just one, or if it's a comprehensive question, feel free to leave that as well. Thank you.
So just to clarify a little bit with it, what we're using a Google number. So when you call and you leave a voicemail, it actually transcribes that to us so that it comes into us in an email format. And so that's why it's important to leave your voicemail. It's basically we're taking your voice, transcribing it into the written, and that's how we will get your question. You can also text it, and then it'll come through as your text as well. So that's why it's so important to use the voicemail option or text in. So again, please do submit your questions, your comments. Jeff is eagerly awaiting the chance to answer another one. He does have an excellent singing voice, so we'll hold that towards the end of it. So if you hang on a little longer. Jeff will break out in Ave Maria. I do want to note we are going up in viewers, but we're not going up in questions. So please do submit your questions to us so that we can help get the best information to you. So not only that you can submit comments to us, return the favor, but also so that you are aware the Mississippi River Levee system, the MR&T as a whole, is one of the most important and most successful infrastructure projects we've ever had. It is a life safety project that we look at. More than 4 million people are served by these levees in their homes, in their businesses. And so as you move forward and you're looking through this SEIS and this study, one of the greatest threats of living with the Mississippi River is the threat of flooding. And so this will help us in risk reduction factors. But we also know that no one knows their portion of the levee system better than you do. You are out there, you're on the levee system, you bike, you walk, you just go, in some cases, I think you walking your dogs along that side. So you see things, you know things that will help us make sure that A, we have the best information available, but B, we're making the right decisions as we move forward. So please do submit your questions, submit your comments so that we can ensure that as we reach that final supplemental environmental impact statement, we can be confident that we're getting there using the best information available. So we are dropping in numbers. I've just been informed that if we can hit 75 people, Jeff will, in fact, really will sing Ave Maria for us.
I do not consent.
Call your friends. Call your family.
I do not consent.
I did. Right. Everyone, we haven't had a question come in. So in all seriousness, we haven't had a question come in. So we'll stick around just a little longer. But what we will do is we may close down the live function of it, but we'll continue to monitor this site for any questions that are coming in for a little while after.
I believe we are going to offer just a little bit of clarification on the mitigation question that is coming in right now before we close, Ricky.
Excellent. Thanks, sir. So we did get a question, what coronavirus safety standards will be observed by your employees when they report to work? I cannot speak on behalf of the Memphis or the Vicksburg district, but I can speak on behalf of the New Orleans district. We have multiple options that we are looking at and multiple means. One is we will maintain the 6 feet distance, or we have a masking policy while you're in the building. You also, to come into the New Orleans district site, you must go through a temperature check as well. As we move forward and through it, our driver and our guidelines will be the federal and the state, as well as the local for the location of your headquarters. So that for us is the federal guidelines, the state of Louisiana, the governor's guidelines, as well as the city of New Orleans. And so that's what we will be looking at. So what that means in a daily life is we will have reduced capacity within the building. We're going to stay within the government's or the governor's requirements for capacity within a room, such as if you were looking at the gym or the cafeteria, there will be a reduced capacity to do so as well. We're also maintaining a very healthy telework policy as we move forward for that element as well. So what we do not want to do is have people who are high risk, or they have extenuating circumstances, such as having to take care of their children, or be at home while their children are virtually going to school. So we'll maintain that. Our policy is as flexible as possible for as long as possible. However, with regards to the public side of our efforts, we will be maintaining a more virtual environment. I know that New Orleans District, as a general rule, we are one of the more frequent public meeting sites or locations, but for the foreseeable future, we are going to be running more and more virtual meetings as we move through. So I hope that does answer your question as what we will be doing. We do have sanitation policies in place as well. So we are really leading to adhering to all of our state, local, and federal guidelines to ensure that when you do return into the building, you're returning to a safe and clean environment.
Hi, just another reminder for those that weren't on before. We are getting calls or text to our Google Voice box, but folks are not leaving either a text message or voice message. So it is not a manned phone number. You have to leave a message. So again, that number is 601-392-2237. Again, 601-392-2237. Please leave your name, your location, and your concern. It could be any project in the supplemental impact statement, or it could just be a comment or a question about anything that we've discussed here today. And we will obviously respond to that by the final impact statement. It will be in an appendix. Thank you. So just one more thing on where I just said if you have specific questions, it has been pointed out to me, and I knew this, just didn't know exactly where it is, so thank you to the team that's listening. If you're interested in specific work items, you can refer to Appendix 1 in the Supplemental Impact Statement, which has a project description of every one of the items and an accompanying map of the location.
Again, we'll hang out a little longer as we're waiting for questions, but please do submit your question via the chat function on Facebook, or leave a voicemail or text through the 601 number that we have on your screen. You can also please submit your comments for the record to the email, the physical address, or also to the Google number. So there are multiple ways to submit comments. If you want them into the record, they are all received, they are all evaluated, they are all considered as we move to the final portion of the evaluation itself. If you have a question that you want us to address, or you need something clarified with the SEIS or the process itself, please submit those through the chat function or texting the Google 601 phone number. All right, so we're just going to hold here for a few more minutes just in case there's any remaining questions or comments.
we may not be able to answer them fully here, but certainly if you log it here, we can definitely respond to it in full. In the wake of the draft EIS, we'll do it by the final EIS. So thank you again. We'll give about 5 more minutes. If there's no more questions, we will bring this to a conclusion. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so we have an addendum to a previously asked question. I'm going to read the question again, and it's from Mr. Mike Irwin. Have there been any considerations such as increased mitigation ratios for long-standing MRL compensatory mitigation deficits? So the addendum to the previously provided response is that construction and operation and maintenance of work items and the associated acquisition of mitigation lands continue for activities described in the 1998 SEIS. As congressional funding is received, the construction of the remaining work will be accomplished based on risk-informed prioritization. To date, USACE has undertaken reforestation efforts on 5,672 acres, or approximately 86% of the total required mitigation acreage that are under various stages of restoration. So again, thank you for your question.
Yeah, we do have a Google Voice question that is being transcribed right now, and we'll be answering that in just a minute or so.
Okay, so we've got another question from Peter Nimrod. Mr. Nimrod asks, I noticed that you have specifically located potential borrow areas for levee enlargement items. Some borrow areas are identified as currently being open farmland. What happens if that farmland is converted to trees through the WRP program? Will this SEIS number 2 be flexible enough for you to go to another borrow site located outside of the SEIS identified area? Again, excellent question, and we'll be happy to answer that one. So I think we'll talk a little bit holistically about how these work items were laid out, and then specifically address your question, Peter. These work items obviously were designed without site-specific data such as geological data and surveys that are required before you can do detailed designs. And that's just due to the scale of the number of work items and the permissions that would be required and the expenditures that would be required to do that specifically for each of these items. So once we are funded to construct one of these work items, our first move is to go in and get this site-specific data. Some of these borrow areas that we located could end up being in areas that have the land use has changed, or perhaps they're in areas that don't have suitable soils to use for levee construction. So much like we do with the 1998 SEIS number 1 work items, there is some flexibility there. We go in and review what we said we would do and compare it to what we're planning to do now, and at that time a determination is made whether a tiered NEPA document needs to be created. Those come out typically as an environmental assessment that tiers from the SEIS, and those are circulated for public review and for public awareness as well. So that process will still be followed as we do at this point. Thank you.
All right, everyone, we're going to give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and close it again. There's still opportunities to comment at this point. And then, of course, you can always join us for the exciting conclusion of our virtual meetings tomorrow at 6 p.m. So by all means, anybody who attended today is urged to join us again tomorrow. And if we receive any questions after the meeting, then we will address them tomorrow to open the Q&A tomorrow's meeting. But again, we're going to hang on just for a couple more minutes. If we don't get any more questions, I do want to say thank you very much for joining us. The public's role in determining the future of these projects and where we go is integral to, I think I said that wrong, but to us getting to the projects that we need to move forward. These are critical. These are very successful, but they're very important life safety infrastructure that we need to make sure we are moving in the right direction with them. So again, thank you very much for coming. Unless we get another question at the end, I do want to thank everybody, regardless of where you are, whether you're in the upper river, lower river, or not in the valley at all. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I do Hope that you will join us tomorrow at 6 p.m. We'll be around for an hour or so. But at this time, I'm going to look to my team for any last minute add-ins. But I thank you, and we'll close. Again, you can still submit your comments through the different ways that we have available, and we will bring them forward to the 6 p.m. But barring anything, I'm going to turn it to Jeff for one final word, and then we'll close out. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ricky. And I just want to echo what Ricky said. We do really appreciate all the input that we got here today. We will be here tomorrow night, 6 to 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. We look forward to any additional questions or thoughts you might come up with in the interim. And just to reinforce that we do have formally until October 13th for any questions. So it's not that you have to submit them during any specific time period. So again, we appreciate your participation. I'd like to thank my co-leads here, Mark and Daniel, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.